Good afternoon. There's something we need to discuss. I've been meaning to lately, and it's regarding privacy screens, hedges, hedgerows, whatever you want to call it. Things we plant generally on the borders of our properties to shield off an area. In my case, it's the highway here, and I've done that. But it's not a permanent thing. I've purchased very few plants and trees for this border. Most of them are just rescues from landscape dumps. So I'm very pleased with the way it's been, but it changes. Unless you plant something that has a mature, here's the key. If you're planting a hedge, make sure you're aware of the mature height of the species of your planting. If it wants to be 100 feet tall, it's going to be a constant battle to keep it short. And you're going to be disappointed and frustrated as the tree gets older in trying to keep it to a manageable height to do the screening. So, as plants mature, well, actually, I'm going to do a discussion and walk along. I'll have to put it on the front camera because you'll be able to see what I'm talking about easier. Let's start right here at one end. It's several hundred feet, and I'll walk by and tell you what I see. Okay. At the beginning, I've got a rhododendron, which has become one of my favorite screenings. They're definitely easy to keep to a reasonable height. They respond well to any kind of pruning. They regenerate and come back thicker. Now, how about hemlocks? Everyone loves hemlocks. But the problem, they want to be 120 feet tall at maturity. You're constantly topping them. These need a little topping. It's been a couple of years. Another problem, the deer. They eat the bottoms. They browse on the bottoms. The bottom branches die. Look at all the dead. I hate removing the dead because it's my screening, but I also don't like looking at dead. White pines. Lots of people use white pines for screening. I've clipped and clipped and clipped this one. It needs some more clipping. Again, the bottom's thinning out. As they mature, they lose their lower branches. So, at the base here last fall, you can hardly see them. They're just little twigs. But I took some cuttings of oak leaf hydrangea. This is a shady area. I've got 6 established cuttings that I grew through the summer. They have nice root systems, and it's a shady, moist area right here. So I'm thinking that at least in the growing months, these will grow up and fill in the low area that's been opened up from dieback. So these will become a big, bushy, low mass of greenery, and they'll have blooms, something which hemlocks and pines don't have. Rhododendrons, they have great blooms. Forsythia, no matter how hard you clip it each year, it still loses its leaves, but this is dense. It's shady for Forsythia, not the best spot, but I think this might have even been here when I bought the place. Here's a great rhododendron, just the common purple catalba, super duper. I don't have to prune it much anymore. It completely obscures the road. I really like rhodos for a hedgerow. Back in here, I've got a PJM. Also, nice dense foliage right to the ground. Although confuse the traffic. Although deer do have browsed this, I believe. They have browsed this. Taxus, the common yew. Not so good. It gets browsed continually. Okay above where they can reach, but the bottom, constant disappointment. Alright, I've got some deciduous things that I just stuck in here. Now, the reason I stuck these in here is because I've got that issue with the lower branches dying back, deer browsing. So I'm planting in front of my mature hedgerow. These are all hemlocks I dug up in the woods, rescued. It's a mixture of evergreens. Here I've got two Pieris japonica, Japanese Andromeda. I purchased these. Unfortunately, they died back halfway in the first winter. This is the second winter and there's no dieback, so hopefully they'll be happy here. It's a good location, half a day of sun, get some moisture here. So I'm hoping these will grow up and fill in this low dying back area. The deer haven't browsed it so much this year, but in the past they have. Also, shade dieback. I've got cedars in there. They were browsed and then the lower parts died from lack of light and just lack of nourishment from the stems being abused like that. I've tried the green giant arborvitae, supposedly deer resistant. Not so much, I'm afraid. For me, it's been money down the drain. They do browse it. It's not their first choice, but they do browse it. These red spruce I've planted, now they've done pretty well. Picea rubra. The deer do not browse them. They have stayed branched to the ground, at least to this point, and this is about 20 years, I think. Another one that's good is, that's a white spruce up there. Very resistant to disease. And it has stayed branched to the ground, again, 15 to 20 years on that one. I took that home as a little cutting in my backpack. Well, here's my crows. They're coming to check out. Just coming to check out the peanuts. That's another video. All right, here's another Colorado blue spruce. What happens to those? Has anyone experienced that? They're very susceptible, at least in humid climates, to leaf cast fungi. Several different species of leaf cast fungi. And unless you want to spray with fungicides every year, you're going to experience this slow dieback, slow needle loss from bottom to top. I'll never plant another blue spruce. Here's a Hetz juniper that I got abandoned in a nursery. I think that was browsed on, but they generally don't like junipers. They have sharp needles. And I continue planting shrubs at the base. I've got quite a mixed bag. Right here you got the blue spruce, Hetz juniper, red spruce, northern white cedar. Under here I have quince. It gives a splash of color. Just something to break up the monotony of solid evergreens. And again, important to keep the base filled with other things. Now this is a white fir, Abies concolor. Guess what it gets? Tip blight. That's last year's damage. I knew it would come. Wait for as long, soft needles. This was a specimen, but in a couple years it's going to be gone. Again, these are more suited to arid regions, not so great in Maine. There's a red spruce, branched right to the ground. Now here, I could have planted an evergreen hedge, but as a kid I used to shear my privet hedge with my father, and I just wanted to have a privet hedge. So even though it's not evergreen, I kind of enjoy it here. But on another note, guess what I just read this in an issue, a notice from the state of Maine. Common privet right here has now been put on the list of, what's it called, invasive species. Who would have known? But yes, working in the woods, I have seen privet out of place. Gosh, they get 20, 25, even 30 feet tall. I've seen them if they've become naturalized. So that's no longer available. Not supposed to be for sale anymore. I have a few invasives here. I have a purple barberry, Berberis japonica atropurpureum. No longer supposed to be sold or planted. Becomes invasives. The birds eat the berries and poop them in the woods, and they come up everywhere. My goodness, I've seen some islands here in Maine that are just choked with barberry. You can hardly walk on them. And I've seen woods ruined by barberry. And I've had many jobs where I had to go try to annihilate barberry with herbicides, cutting and herbicides. I let my spray license lapse several years ago. I sprayed for 30 years, insecticides, herbicides, and it was giving me headache, heartburn, even with protective gear. Anyway, that's another story, right? Back to the... Oh, here I can show you a lot of dieback in here because there's a lot of Colorado spruces. But here's something I did a few weeks ago. The deer originally just browsed the base of these cedars, and I left the stems as cover, but they're not very pretty. Dead stems, what I tell my clients is, dead is dead. Dead is dead. So I remove them, and the clean look is much better, although it opens up the road more. Here's the first thing I planted on my property. I don't recall the name, but it's a spreading juniper. Andorra juniper, maybe. Been here a long time. It's quite a beast. But junipers also get needle cast, but this one's holding its own. But here's where I'm gonna, as soon as I'm done this video, I'm gonna get my handsaw out, and it's time to start removing some dead branches. Hemlock, spruce, hemlock. But I'm always replenishing. Here's a white spruce I popped in. Another Japanese Andromeda. This one cost $75. It was 5 feet tall. It's been dying back, but I'm hopeful it'll adapt. I've got little white pine seedlings coming in. Here's a fir, white pines. I planted this little white spruce. I'm trying to just keep things going. Here's a blue spruce, besides being topped by the power company, it's almost completely gone. But I'm going to raise up the branch level, remove some dead. You see I've underplanted this blue spruce with, these are actually root cuttings from my rhododendrons on the property. And they're doing well, but they'll do better if I do a little more elevation of dead limbs. I hate to do it, but even grasses and weeds and wildflowers will come in here more and thicken up the hedgerow. That's a point I wanted to mention. Keep your hedgerow thick, whether it's naturalizing with grasses. See, nothing grows where it's dense, shade, but as soon as you begin elevating, grasses and other things pop in. That's some kind of a natural viburnum that seeded itself in. This little fir seeded itself. And back to the rhododendrons. What a great hedgerow. What great screening. I think this one here is a rhododendron maximum. Gets 30 feet tall. Native. It's a native rhododendron here in Maine. I see it in the woods sometimes. This was given to me by a rock star's wife. And the Japanese Andromeda, a spring flowering shrub, and deer resistant. And we don't have the whitefly problem we do as much as the southern states, so it's staying thick and rather healthy. All right, so that's my hedgerow and the issues it has. Overall, it's still attractive, and we will move on from there. Thanks for watching.